So we have been at this busy schedule of gardening, harvesting, and preserving for about 6 months. And this is the time of year when I have just reached my limit. I am so done with preserving and I'm ready to do one last clean of all of our equipment, store the canning pots, put everything away, and call it quits. But we are still at the point when we have just a little bit left to preserve and we need to make the most of the hard work that we already put into everything. This is not a new thing for me. It happens every single year. I hit kind of a wall. I'm done for the year. And what I think about is something that my art professor, he would say that finishing the last 10% of the painting is the hardest part. And that was true, and it is so true in other areas of my life as well, especially with homesteading. I hit this breaking point. I'm so done, and there is still that lingering last 10% of the job. And in order to really finish and finish strong, I need to do that 10%. And it needs to be done whether I'm tired or not, or whether I feel like it or not. I did a late summer planting of tomatillos, and I actually got a harvest before the frost came. So I have about a gallon of tomatillos here that I'm going to use and make some tomatillo salsa with. The recipe for the tomatillo salsa is coming out of this book, The Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. I've never made this before, so I don't know if it's good or not, but we're gonna test it out today. It's super important to me to finish what I started, and that is because I have a really deep reason why I got into homesteading, and it wasn't because of fear or because we wanted to be preppers. It was because I had a huge improvement in my health when I switched to this lifestyle, and our entire family just really loves good food, and we love homegrown food. We've been really spoiled with that. And we also love being outside. So there's a lot of reasons why we do this and why I am not giving up just yet. So this is our last big push to preserve food for the year and finish strong. And then we will enjoy a much needed 6-month break over the winter. And over the winter, we are still working on different projects, both inside our house and outside, but it's just a really different set of projects. And it feels very fresh and new, and we get re-energized by doing different things over the winter. And it's definitely a slower pace too, that's for sure, than our spring, summer, and fall routine of harvesting and preserving constantly. Speaking of rest, I want to thank our sponsor for this video, Birch Living. They are offering the Seasonal Homestead followers an exclusive discount this month, and stick around for that because it is one of the best I've ever seen. First, I want to tell you about Birch Living. Birch Living makes mattresses that are crafted with responsibly sourced materials like organic cotton, organic wool, and 100% natural latex. The biggest reason that we chose Birch and that we love Birch is because the mattresses are all natural, so you don't get any of the harmful off-gassing like other mattresses can often have. Cam and I have the Birch Luxe Natural Mattress, which is an upgrade from their well-loved original mattress, and we actually have a couple of the Birch original mattresses in the boys' rooms. They are a big upgrade from what the boys were sleeping on before. With how hard they are to wake up sometimes, maybe it is a little bit too comfortable. With your Birch mattress, you get a 100-night sleep trial plus a 25-year warranty. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Birch is offering an exclusive discount for you guys for Black Friday. It is 27% off your Birch mattress plus 2 free EcoRest pillows. Use promo code BirchPartner27 to take advantage of this special offer. Our last big canning project of the year is making Cajun cowpea soup. I've mentioned this many times before, but it's a family favorite, and so because everybody eats it, this is one where I wait until a weekend and everybody pitches in to prep and make this soup. Good right now. Something. Just the biggest ones. I am so glad that everybody was helping because we were able to make the soup start to finish in about 2.5 hours, which is actually pretty good because we were making a 4 times larger batch than what the original recipe calls for. And this is a 100% from scratch soup. So we make the chicken stock. The other thing that's awesome about this soup is that it is 100% or maybe like 99.9% from our land, things we've grown. The only thing that we still put in there that we purchase is a couple of spices. Those are from the store, but everything else we have grown over the summer. The pork comes from our pigs, and we are using up the peppers that we harvested right before our first frost. I really needed to use those up, and at the beginning of making this, you may have seen Noelle was going through the peppers. We had some that had already gone bad and were squishy, and so we were separating those two. We also didn't have the best onion harvest this year, so we have smaller onions, and we decided to use some of our freeze-dried onions from last year because last year we had an amazing harvest. So we just make what we have work, and because this is a pressure canning recipe that does the maximum amount of time, 90 minutes, we can be a little bit more lax on the ingredients, and you get a little bit more leeway of what you can use and what you can't. This year I planted my cowpeas about 3 weeks earlier than I normally do. I think it was mid-May, which is about 2 or 3 weeks after our last frost. And I also planted them in an area where they got a lot of sun. So this year we actually got double the yield that we did last year and did the exact same amount of space. So we harvested 10 pounds this year, and last year we harvested around 5 pounds. I used about 4.5 pounds to make this cowpea soup, this big batch that we did. So we still have enough to make another batch, and we also have enough to save for seed. I like to save at least like a pound for seed, maybe 2. So even though the soup took us about 2.5 hours to make, the actual time of pressure canning 3 batches of this soup took several more hours. So I didn't finish this until very late at night. So this made 19 quarts of soup. And the next day I cleaned them all up and took the rings off. I did notice one of them didn't seal, but the main reason for that was the lid was bent and I didn't realize it was bent, so it couldn't get a good seal, and that made the kids happy because then they could have some right away. It feels so good to have that canning project checked off the list because that is a big one that I am glad to have done. According to our weather forecast, we are going to get a couple of hard frosts coming up, so it's time for me to harvest all of the ginger and the turmeric. They love heat and tropical climates. I planted them in the high tunnel to mimic that environment, but it's not invincible. So when it does get cold like this, we just need to harvest them and preserve them. We had harvested a little bit of ginger, but I didn't really get to see the full harvest until this day, and I was very happy with the outcome. This is probably the best ginger that I've ever grown, and the same with the turmeric. I've never grown that before, but we had a good harvest with that. A lot of that has to do with having the high tunnel. It's just the ideal conditions to grow this in, especially given the fact that we're not in a tropical area. So because I am at this point of just being a little bit burned out of doing a lot of preserving, we decided to do something very simple with the ginger and the turmeric. I have wanted to try to make candied ginger for a while because that is something that I do buy and use in like baked goods, and sometimes just as like a little treat for me. After that's made, everything else is going into vacuum seal bags and going straight into the freezer. There's no need to blanch these beforehand. They can just go in the freezer as is, and we kind of left them in bigger chunks just because I've heard if you chop it up before you freeze it, it loses some of its potency. So we kept it in the big pieces, but we did have to break them up a little bit just because I couldn't figure out how to get the dirt out without breaking it into some smaller chunks prior to freezing. This is the first time that I have made candied ginger, and I was a little bit intimidated by it because I don't normally do candy anything. So I just printed out a recipe and followed the recipe. The ginger was still really dirty at this point, so I ended up soaking it beforehand after I had sliced it. I started out by slicing it with the mandolin, but the mandolin was kind of a pain. It was just easier to slice it by hand with a knife. And once the ginger was all rinsed, then I put it in a pot with water and let it boil for 35 minutes. I guess I really didn't know how candied ginger was made because how much cooking and sugar went into this was kind of a surprise. I had in my mind that since it was ginger, it would be sort of healthy, but with the amount of sugar and cooking that happened, I think it's only a tiny bit healthy. After it was done cooking, I drained off the liquid and saved that for some ginger tea, and then we put the ginger in the pot with the sugar and a little bit of the reserved liquid, and you let that cook for like 20 minutes. And this whole time I was very uncertain about whether or not it was going to turn out, but magically at the end, the sugar recrystallized, and all of a sudden I was left with the candied ginger that I expected. It does not look at all like the store-bought ginger that I'm used to. It looks a lot like Frosted Flakes, the cereal, but it tastes really good. It has that characteristic sweet, and then you get the spicy hot ginger afterwards. After that was all made, we took everything that was left and put it in the vacuum seal bags and then in the freezer. This was super simple to do, and I was very happy about that.